Right, hello all. We are going to do the SEQ for chapter 6 and 7 for this video. However, I think before I start on the SEQ itself, I'm going to look at this particular structure because over the years, as I relook at the chapter, I realized that it's not the best in terms of organization. So I've actually reorganized it in a way in the notes, which you would eventually get at the end of the after the chapter, and hopefully before your WAs. And I've reorganized it in a way that it actually looks a bit more. I wouldn't say it's actually clearer. Uh, And I won't say that it actually helps to answer the questions well, because to be honest, when we look at the O-level questions, there's no questions is being asked on chapter 6, in terms of the reasons why World War II started in Asia Pacific. Okay, and I think that maybe they are avoiding asking this question because they know that it's actually a bit difficult to ask that question. Right now, before that, before I get into all that, let me just talk about this first because my recordings for this chapter were done a few years ago. I think that was before I reorganized the entire chapter. Okay, now for this chapter, right, if we the issue here is reasons why World War II started in Asia Pacific, right? But the problem, unlike the one in Europe, is that there actually isn't a clear start date when we talk about war in Asia Pacific. So if you look at what you're seeing on the screen right now, there are three dates: 1931, 37, and 41. Okay, so we can argue to say that maybe in Manchuria it wasn't war yet because it was just simply an invasion. There was no fighting, and Manchuria lost, and so Japan won and took over the entire Manchuria. So if there's no fighting between the two, there isn't exactly war, right? Whereas the China one, there would definitely be war. So actually, when we use the term World War II, it might not actually be even accurate. Okay, so in terms of history, when we ask about when did World War II start, most people would point to Hitler's invasion of Poland, 1st September 1939, as the start dates. But then war has really started in Asia Pacific when Japan invaded China in 1937, and trust me, that definitely was some serious fighting going on. Okay, because China definitely tried to repel Japan as much as they could. So you see, the problem here is when they ask the question, okay, of the main reason why World War II started in Asia Pacific is because of weakness of LON. If they ever do ask a question like that, right, then the problem here would it be war in Asia Pacific, war in China, or war in Southeast Asia? So those are two separate incidents to me, and they are linked to a certain extent, but it doesn't have to be linked. Okay, so if they don't specify the year inside the question, right, then you would actually have to cover the entire chapter. But it's not necessary to do so because the respective reasons for the war in China and the war in Southeast Asia actually is very different. Okay, we can say that the war in Southeast Asia was also caused by the war in China because of American foreign policy changes that is linked to the war in China. I should draw a line over here. Okay, that is possible. Okay, however, that would actually cover the entire chapter then, right? And that would actually cause the entire essay to be very long for a 12-mark question on the main reason why World War II started was due to certain factor. So that's why I reorganize it in this way. And if they do ask a question with a specific year, that's where you would be able to address it. Okay, and also in a 8-mark question, they will be able to actually looking at they'll be looking at specific factors, so they can ask more specific questions with respect to the China and the Southeast Asia part. All right. Okay, so this is how I broke it down into. Okay, and again, just a very brief overview of it. When we look at the reasons for the invasion of China, okay, it was because of the weakness of LON, where they didn't do anything when they invaded Manchuria, and also the expansionist policy. And the reasons for the expansionist policy was because of ambition. They want to match the other European countries, and also the crisis in Japan, which forced them to need to expand and find living space, and therefore they look for it in China. Okay, so then while they are attacking China and having a war with China, that's where the American foreign policy changes came about when they talk about the oil embargo, okay, and the resources embargo on Japan. So that forced Japan to actually turn to Southeast Asia to look for the resources. Okay, and that's why they started invading Southeast Asia. So the question here could be, right, if there were no American foreign policy changes, would Japan have actually wanted to invade Southeast Asia? The answer could be yes, because if you link it to the ambition of Japan, then they say what they want. Their ambition is not just China; they want the entire region, and so therefore they would eventually go into Southeast Asia as a matter of when. It could be possible to argue that, but immediately at the point in time when they chose to invade Southeast Asia, it was more likely that they needed the resources. Okay, and that brought about the war in Europe. That brought about the war in Europe. That the war in Europe actually allowed them to actually safely invade Southeast Asia with little interference, or rather weak interference from the from the European colonial masters. Okay, right. So the next part that we're going to is the questions itself. Okay, so if you look at the questions from the O-level questions, you can see that for chapter 6, okay, they asked something different. The most important cause of Japan's expansionist policy was the impact of protectionism. So the issue is not about start of World War II in Europe. The issue is Japan's expansionist foreign policy in the 1930s, which I wouldn't say it is about. I wouldn't say that it is about World War II. Okay, so if you look back here, expansionist foreign policy, okay, then the given factor is impact of protectionism. So impact of protectionism would fall under one of the crisis in Japan. So then you see for this question, right, it falls nicely here. Oh, look, I have a pen. Falls nicely here. Okay, so then you can only just make use of these factors to answer that particular question. Then the other two questions are from chapter 7. Okay, these two questions from chapter 7, they are really much easier and more straightforward to do. So the chapter 7 questions are very easy to answer, and at least from what we have seen so far lah. Okay, right. Okay, then let's try to take a look at the rest of the other questions from the other schools, okay, and see how they are actually phrasing their questions. Okay, chapter 6 questions. Here, this one. The issue is Japanese aggression towards China in the 1930s. That's the issue. And militarism in Japan, that's under also the crisis in Japan. Okay? And Japanese aggression towards China in the 1930s. I like these schools. I have no idea what school, because I removed all the schools for, privacy issues and all. I like the way the school phrase this particular issue, because they use the word aggression. They don't use war. So, and then they use China in the 1930s. That would cover both Manchuria and China. Which again, to remind you, Manchuria is a part of China. Okay, it's an area in China. So that questions would encapsulate this entire thing. Right? So militarism in Japan led to Japanese aggression towards China. You can disagree. You can talk about weakness of League of Nations. You can talk about the ambition and the crisis in Japan as well. All these will become factors contributing to aggression towards China in 1930s. Okay? So you see, this question is very precise. You don't need to talk about this at all. You don't need to talk about American foreign policy changes. You don't need to talk about the war in Europe at all. Okay? Right, moving on to the next question. Oh my goodness, so many chapter 7 questions. Here. Oh, I got a feeling this was our question. leading to the outbreak of World War II in the Asia Pacific. Okay, and Japanese expansionist foreign policy. Okay, so this basically is the issue, right? When you look at the issue, the main reason why World War II broke out, okay, is because of certain something, and then after they give one of the factors that would be Japan expansionist foreign policy. Yeah, so in answering this question, you realize you need the entire textbook, the entire chapter's worth of stuff to answer this particular question. Okay, because again, the outbreak of World War II in Asia Pacific is not clearly defined to be whether is it Southeast Asia or is it China. Okay. Okay, now this is a chapter 6 question, but it is a difficult, sort of difficult question, but not impossible to answer. Okay, the issue here is to attack Pearl Harbor on 7th of December. Now, this particular issue is linked to the war in Southeast Asia. In order for them to be able to invade Southeast Asia safely, they need to attack Pearl Harbor. Need to attack Pearl Harbor so that the American Navy will not come and actually stop them from invading Southeast Asia. So the given factor is no choice. So the difficult part might be yes, they have a choice. And then you look for one of the factors in look for one of the factors here. Oh wow, this is a difficult question. How can we say that they had a choice to not attack Pearl Harbor? Yeah, I see the difficulty in answering this question. Okay, I think you can actually come from the point of view that you need to argue on the part about choice. So when we talk about factors like ambition, okay, that is actually a choice whether you want to have an ambition or not. So that could actually, well, talk about the, yeah, whether they had the choice in actually attacking Pearl Harbor or not. Okay, all right, let's move on. As you can see, most of the questions, I hope that as I'm scrolling, you are sort of actually glancing at the questions. If not, just pause the video and do so, right? Most of the questions are really talking about defeat of Japan. Wow, nobody really wants to ask about the start of World War II in Asia Pacific. Okay, again, the most important reason the Pacific War broke out was because of USA's worsening relations with Japan. So when they say Pacific War, are they talking about the war with China? Okay, USA's worsening relations with Japan. So when they say the Pacific War, is it only Southeast Asia? Or would it be China as well? Because the term Pacific War, well, they are referring to the Pacific Ocean. Yeah, so if I look at the map, which actually I am right now, I have a map right there. Yeah, it actually might cover China as well. It's difficult. I'm not sure what the term actually refers to, because I think it's an American term when they say Pacific War. Because for them, they have two theaters of war. The first one is the Pacific War, which would address Japan, and the other one is the European War, which would address Hitler. So that term might be used loosely and not accurately. So then, if we are not aware of the definition of the Pacific War and we claim to say that it covers both China and Southeast Asia, then again we will need to address all. If not, then we need to talk about USA's worsening relations with Japan would be here, this one. Then you talk about the other one as well that led to the breaking out of war in Southeast Asia. Okay, so as you can see, all right, the questions. Not a lot of schools they like to ask the questions because it's easier to ask chapter 7 stuff, and chapter 7 is definitely very straightforward. The main reason for defeat of Japan was because of something, okay, dropping of the atomic bombs and the strength of USA, the overextension of Japanese empire. So that is pretty straightforward. So that's something that we are not going to go into too much in depth. Okay, right. So that pretty much covers the 12-mark SEQs. Okay, now if we just take a quick glance at the 8-mark SEQs. All right. Okay, so reasons why Japan attacked Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor in 1941. So that actually would be a pretty straightforward one to look at this attack Pearl Harbor because the American foreign policy changes. Okay, and that's why they wanted to attack Pearl Harbor, for them to be able to invade Southeast Asia. So that it's within this particular region of factors that you are looking at. Explain why League of Nations was unable to stop the Japanese Manchuria takeover of Manchuria after 1931. Now, this question might be a bit tricky because at first glance, you see the words Japan, you see the words League of Nations, you see Manchuria, you might be thinking this is chapter 6. Yes, you can use stuff from chapter 6, but if you look at it, they are asking about reasons for the weakness of League of Nations. So this question could actually also be using information from chapter 1. Okay, reasons for the weakness of League of Nations to answer this question. All right. And finally, 2019 elect, explain why Japan occupied Manchuria in 1932. Okay, and that would be here, this one, ambition and crisis in Japan. All right. Okay. Now take a quick glance at the questions. They are not that challenging, at least if we to address these questions, if we broke it up into this structure, it seems easier to understand and easier to actually address the various factors that are necessary. Okay, so I'm not going to go too much in depth into the rest of the questions. Okay, the questions are all there for you as part of the video. You can just simply click pause, take a look at the questions and see if you're able to answer them. All right, if you have any questions, ask whichever teachers in the class, whichever history teachers in the class to assist you. Okay. For my students in Chua Chu Kang Secondary School, some of your classes, at least for the year 2021, the Padlet wall is still up. Any questions, you can put it up there. I will address them if there are any. All right. Okay. And that's it for this particular video on the SEQ for chapters 6 and 7.